All right. To kick it off, I thought maybe it would be interesting to kind of note that, I mean, obviously this is a very eclectic group of art. Maybe you guys could each kind of very briefly tell us a little bit about the influences that kind of inspired your very distinct styles and forms. I don't know.
Yeah, I watch a lot of like videos of cute animals, and if a baby video pops up on Facebook, I'm gonna look at that. And just, I made that cute roll-on film, so that's just like, I think that's it for me. There's a slow loris and a squirrel and like an eye is that animal.
I've been influenced a lot by graphic novels and painting, so like Alan Moore, Persepolis, Alison Bechdel is a particular favorite, and then of course pretty much the entire history of painting. So.
Well, I'd say that I'm influenced, and particularly in this is my first moving work. I'm mainly a painter and a sculptor, so I'm influenced by the history of etching, the history of drawing, and I'm also interested in more contemporary things in what I didn't want it to be like. I actually wanted it not to appear like most of the other things that I see. So I also just, for that, I designed the creatures in Noah, and then which were sculptures, and then I worked with ILM to make them into a moving image. And so I could see the history of that and how that is very kind of similar, because the same people make it all. So I really was trying to take a form that has not been used in this, to mix digital with a form that wasn't. I did Dennis the Pirate.
Yeah, why don't we go down the line just one more time? So Dennis the Pirate.
The Lingerie Show.
I did Rolling.
I did Hotbod. I guess my influences, I've always been figure drawing, and I've always just been influenced by weird people I see on the subway, and like I guess my really early influences would be like Shel Silverstein and stuff like that. I don't know. I guess it's just a lot of subconscious.
And I would say I'm influenced by Mike Rader, who's like an underground New York filmmaker.
Oh, sorry.
Now, some of you guys are, I mean, you're artists outside. As you mentioned, you're sculptor and creator. How does your other art compare or contrast? How is it different than the animation that we saw today? Or how does it influence? I mean, how do you influence yourself? Is perhaps another question to ask. That's kind of a build on that. I mean, you just
Should I go? Okay.
Silence.
I used to paint for a very long time.
Yeah, you were a painter, right?
Yeah, for like 15 years. Went to the New York Studio School. It was a traumatic experience, but I recovered. Basically, I found myself like sort of moving away from images and creating these like pictograms, and it became like sort of a language. And I realized like, oh, I'm trying to write, so maybe I should do graphic novels. And I tried doing that, and then I realized I wanted to do animation. So it just sort of one thing came out of the next.
Well, I've been spending the last 40 years making still images, whether they're sculptures, prints, or drawings or paintings. But I was always interested in how it evolves, whether a painting evolves or any of the work changes over time. And so I just became interested in trying to match, to see what the difference and how they talk to each other, the still image and the moving image. So actually when I show this piece, I really like to show it with, it was made with over 1,000 etchings. So I really think to understand it, it's more interesting to see the etchings with the moving image.
I'm curious about work at editing that movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how much is everything in it? Is anything left out?
Well, yeah, I think Sam left out quite a bit, and he actually redid a lot of etchings. So that 1,000 is probably really 2,000. But it kind of depended on, I mean, there's certain scenes in the film where it's almost, one etching per frame, which is incredibly fast. And, obviously to get anything out of that single frame, you have to pause and you have to really look at it. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the process with Sam was kind of playing with, using the images in longer format or also making it more kind of frenetic and using them against each other more. So yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with Sam. There's the best way to kind of see the film is also to see the etchings behind it, because there were so many, and so many that were discarded too.
And I'm going to add to it now, actually.
It's getting
I
longer.
realize I'm going to add to it in the mushroom scene, but without changing the time frame. Because there was like two, I'll just so you understand, there was the two scenes when it first starts and he goes, and the monkey gave him all these bad ideas, which, you know, the story is by Dennis Johnson, which he wrote for my daughter many years ago. He was babysitting one night for her. And if you don't know Dennis Johnson, I would urge you to go read him. He's one of the great American writers. And originally it was just going to be the monkey and the pirate dancing. It was going to be a kind of a ballet with the voiceover, because I really didn't want to make an illustration. I wanted to make a collaboration. But so I spent about 2 years, because each etching takes at least 4 or 5 hours. And I made about 280 etchings of them doing that dance. And I was going to do more. And then in the end of the film, we finally compressed that down to under 20 seconds. So what originally was the whole film became that. And there's no, as Russell was fantastic, but there's no effects in the film other than, what do you call overlapping? Dissolves. Because like even when it goes to dark blue, we learned if I shot on a copy stand, if I shot it early in the morning with the sunlight coming in, it just turned blue. So then I would reshoot some scenes to have that light in there. But I was adamant that we use no digital effects, which made it probably more or less fun for it.
Would you do it again, the same way?
No.
I mean, for your next thing.
No, I want to do one, but I want to figure out another. Now I want to figure out a way to use drawing, but how it hasn't been used. You know, so also, to be honest, the wear and tear on my hands, making that many etchings, I've had surgery since then, I think is just carpal tunnel, which may not just be, may just not be because of
may or may
that,
not be related.
but you know, but I love that, the way etchings look. 'Cause, I mean, those etchings were only this big. So, and the fact that that could hold up on a big screen to me is really interesting.
I'm curious, given how much pre-planning goes into animation, is there any room in any of your films for like happy accidents in the process of filmmaking?
My whole film is a happy accident. I didn't. All I knew was this guy's gonna roll around for 2 minutes, and then every day I did 9 seconds of animation, and I didn't know what the next day would be. I had a bunch of stuff, and that's it. Like vague ideas, but really just allowed it to I had to top the last 9 seconds. Yeah.
No other accidents?
Everything was perfectly planned.
It's all, I'm ditto.
So, would you say that you always want to improvise?
No, I'm making a film right now that has like dialogue that you can't do that because you already have to have it recorded pretty much. So, not always, but I always want to not know everything, because then you can have fun learning what the film is rather than knowing everything and then just putting blocks in place until it's a building, you know? So, yeah.
So actually, we wanted to open up to the audience as well. Any questions from you guys to any of our filmmakers? Yeah, right there, ma'am.
It's just, I guess, asking the filmmakers to talk about texture in their films and its importance.
I love that question. It's like my favorite question of all time. But I mean, I specifically wanted to work with animation because I was seeing so much animation that seemed to recede from the surface. And as a painter, I wanted to see things sort of like that felt more confrontational. And I think what I find appealing about that kind of work, more painterly or more textured animation, is that there's a relationship that I think the audience can create in a very different way, you know, than sort of passively sitting back and using your eyes. You know, you sort of become more physically engaged in an interesting way. So I think it has a completely different sensory sort of encounter that people have, which can create a whole other experience. So I'm very interested in that. I think you're sort of probably
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that I thought a lot about because I think it has a lot to do with intent. And I would say, for some of us up here, the intent was not to be the standard. And I just know that from working on NOAA that they're literally these same 5 guys that make all the effects. They are. Adam McBride is a really great guy, and he's the head of ILM Digital. But they all make the same movies, so everything tends to look the same. Plus, they're using the same tools that you download on the internet. So if you don't push the technology, it's going to look the same. Just the same, I thought the Pixar film was really interesting, but if the sound was off, I would know it was a Pixar film, right? And that's because it's a certain toolbox, and I think if you don't challenge the toolbox, you get this, viscerally you get the same effects. And so it may not matter to some people, that maybe the story may be more important or something else, but if you care about what I think you call texture, is just really intent or originality in terms of the visceral quality.
Other questions? Yeah, right down there.
No, I mean, I had actually the story.
The visual story.
The visual story, yeah, it evolved from when I made one print, and then when I made another, I got ideas. And then I also learned a lot about really pushing my notion of etching physically with the acid. So that allowed for things to happen. And then at one point I decided to put color in it, so I had to reprint a lot of them with color. But yeah, a lot of it was, as we were talking about, happenstance is like through the making.
And unfortunately, we were just cut off, but our artist will be here in the back. Thank you very much, guys. Or in the lobby, I should say. But that's it for our Q&A. Thank you all for coming out to this and enjoy the New York Film Festival.